And then, without warning, the halfling strikes, with fury in his eyes and venom on his dagger. And he lunges directly toward, what's your character's name, Tracer? Herblad Rotgut. Well, it's not very... Ogre? Tracy, you can't be an ogre. Not in Woofrup. You're going to have to make a new character. Did Metzen put you up to this? I suppose I should just never have left you alone to create your character on your own, and no time travel shenanigans. But while that's going on, I think we might have just enough time for another cracking unboxing and review of a figure. And a real horror show has washed up in my lands recently, my friends. Oh, the suspense. Oh, the mystery. What could it be? You read the title of the video. It's Jason Voorhees. Well, a lady version of him anyway. What's that all about? Let's find out together. Yo-ho, and a merry day to the lot of you. I've got my unboxing knife, and I'm very happy to be in front of the camera once again, sharing an unboxing with a lot of you. And today it's Jason Voorhees, another figure like Jubilee from days past, from the company known as Koto Bukia. It's another one of their Bishoujo line, only this one is a horror Bishoujo statue. Very mysterious. This one is designed again by the same fellow, that Shunya Yamashita. We'll see how this compares to Jubilee when we've got it out of the box. Now this one has a companion statue, a Freddy Krueger lady statue, but I didn't want to get that one because I didn't like the look of it. And frankly, I was a little bit tentative about getting this one. But we'll see how it all works out. I'm going to pull it out of the box, and we'll see if it's as spooky as promised. Actually, Jason Voorhees isn't a very spooky character, is he? Just kind of scary. Yes, we've mastered this, I know. This is mere formalities at this point. I was considering doing this with a machete, but I'm already a danger to myself and others with this unboxing knife as it is. Here we go! What are you attached in there with? Oh dear. It's alright. It's only plastic. Matter of fact, this is more plastic than usual. What's this green blob? Why did they base you on a green blob? Magnets! Truly, this is the 21st century when we've moved beyond pins and we've got magnets on our figures. Let's see how efficient it is. Just works! There's other bits to stick on too. There's some weaponry. Well, actually, it's not really weapons, is it? These are tools. Actually, they're murder implements. Alright, this machete goes here. I hope it goes in just like that. Come on. There, got it. Hey. Another tool in here, or piece of evidence we should call it. I refuse to call it a weapon, because murder isn't fighting, and Jason is a murderer. I've got to say, I'm not convinced by this magnet business. How do I get this in your hand? That is not fitting in there. It's like you don't want to be welcomed into Imperial space. Ah, hey! There we go. Well, just on initial impressions, I think the figure looks pretty good. It's technically very sound, but there are a couple of design issues that really jump out at me right out of the box, and one of them is really major, and I think that Friday the 13th fans out there who might be watching will have probably spotted it already. But we'll worry about that later. Let's have a closer look and put Miss Voorhees under review. It's Miss, right? Not Mrs.? Righto, Jason Voorhees. Now this is a proper Freddy versus Jason figure here, and it has the official logo on the box and everything. And that's kinda interesting, because this figure seems to have come out a good 11 years after the film. And that's a nice, comfortable gap that lets this figure have as little to do with that movie's version of Jason as is possible, which is good, because I hold that to be one of the poorer renditions of the character. Matter of fact, this is a living version of Jason, and that's my favourite mode of Mr. Voorhees. Unlikely, rather than impossible, and all the scarier for it, I reckon. Now, from a technical standpoint, this figure lives up to the standard set for me earlier in the year by Koto Bukia's Jubilee figure, and it's a good representative of the level of quality that I feel we should expect from figures in this general price range, if you want to put it that way. If we put Jason and Jubilee together, as seen here, going on a perilous jungle adventure, they don't look out of place next to each other. And this is no doubt due to them having the same designer, but it also speaks to a consistent level of quality throughout the whole line that Koto Bukia makes, which is something that I hope bears out as and when we get to have a look at more of these figures. So Jason here meets all the minimum requirements of decent modelhood. The signs of the figure's construction are sensibly masked by its details, and the sculpt is well realised, with lots of attention paid to the most prominent parts of the figure. So, as usual, we have a very well realised face, and lots of detail elsewhere. There's lots of decent shading in effect on Jason's billowy coat here, and I like the stretching detail on these jeans. It is quite believable, I think. Jason also has mighty abdominal muscles, which is a gesture toward the character's great strength, and an unusual detail to see on a figure belonging to the venerable Bishoujo genre. Now, it is a gesture and nothing more, as further muscular development on the character cannot be confirmed. Jason also has battle damage evident. Now, I know it's meant to be from Freddy, but I like to think they're retaliatory slashes from some final girl, and Jason is seen here posing for a quick photo mid-pursuit. Now about a final girl figure, eh, Kotobukiya? Where's my Ginny? There are a few wee technical glitches as usual, but they only really show up on close inspection. Like a seam here and the fact that this blood is absent from the very edge of the machete blade, which is where it really should be. It makes these implements look a little bit rubbery, sort of prop-like, rather than weaponised gardening tools, but, they're fine. I also really wish these cuts had been detailed in, proper wounds with some depth, rather than just looking like they were painted on, which they actually are. That would have been keen. The base is a bit of a mystery to me. Why is it a green blob? I mean, it's not grass or anything. It doesn't seem much like water either. I think it's actually very likely that once upon a time during the design it was meant to be red, like a pool of blood. But the designers changed their minds, which is actually a good idea, as green, I think, is the right colour choice here. But it's still this weird blob. Weird. Speaking of the base and its weirdness, magnets. No good. This figure falls over all the time. And it's true that I'm moving it about a fair bit for review purposes, but even if you just wanted to have it in your house, you would have to be extra careful, because the slightest bump, and it goes right over. Even if you wanted to adjust its position on your bench or table or wherever you want to put it, and you put it a little too far, straight over it goes. It's lucky they made this out of nice flexible plastic. That's a real problem, especially when it comes dusting day, you know what I mean? You don't get that with the traditional pegs and pins you usually see these models mounted to their bases with. Jubilee here can take all sorts of poking and moving, and even, if she's secure enough, turning upside down. So while magnets on the base might seem fancy or even clever, they're actually a complete detriment, and they almost literally undermine this figure, which is otherwise very technically sound. Now, I did mention earlier a couple of design issues that leapt out at me, and I'm going to discuss those forthwith. Either that or I'm going to read this edition of Tyranny Rex, whatever comes first. Alright, design stuff, here we go. But I'm going to make it clear now that the issues I'm going to talk about aren't really flaws in the damaging sense. Now, the model was clearly designed with a very specific goal in mind, pretty girl Jason Voorhees, and it met that goal. Instead, the issues at hand are arguably something worse. Design decisions that give us an idea of how much better this figure could have been. The first is really minor. Just use your imagination and picture how much better this figure would look if the coat it's wearing was hanging down straight instead of billowing away. It's clearly only doing that to show off Jason's ass in pure cheesecake fashion. Now, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but this is a pretty graceless and plain example of sex appeal. It's a long way from the likes of Lena, whose butt was well positioned in her figure's visual continuity and even had a bit of significance to it to boot. A case might be made that this was actually the right move for this figure marketing-wise, but I still hold that the coat would have looked better hanging straight down, especially in concert with the other design decision that I would like to talk about. This one isn't so minor, and I actually hold it to be a complete tragedy. Jason fans out there saw it right away, I'm sure. It's all about the way that Jason's character is displaced rather than really embraced by the model. And with pretty much all things Jason, it's all in the mask. Now, I'm not talking about how the mask lacks all the accumulated damage from the core films, instead just having a collection of claw marks on it, but with the way that the mask is positioned. You see, whatever ghouly features might lurk beneath it, this mask has become Jason's real face. His actual one doesn't matter. It's never mattered. It's the hockey mask that penetrates into our cultural imagination and stands as an icon not only for Jason himself, but as a metonym for the entire slasher genre. It's also the single clearest visual sign of Jason's fundamental alienation from humanity, effectively generating the lion's share of the uncanny mystique that makes him such an enduring and frightening character. Now, at least until they decided he should become some sort of undying golem and burden this strong, simple characterization with ill-fitting mysticism for around 2 decades. At least that's how I see it, but whatever. The mask sublimates whatever's left of Jason's humanity, rendering it inaccessible to both him and us, unless you manage to tap into his strange post-mortem relationship with his mother. What does all this mean for the figure at hand? Well, just one tragic thing. That uncanny mystique I was talking about? It almost had it. It's literally 2 centimetres off. One change. Put the mask over her face, and there it is. If she was wearing the mask directly, I could look at this figure and say, hey, there's Jason Voorhees, because that's his face. The figure's actual face would be sublimated, just like Jason's is, and placed behind the uncanny identity that helps make Jason so significant in the first place. Now, this would be a completely different story if the mask was an accessory to be worn or removed at leisure, as is a bit of a tradition, it seems, amongst other Jason figures. But no, this mask is fixed in this displaced position, which also displaces the character of Jason along with it. If you look from a certain angle and squint, you can almost get a sense of the female variation of Jason we might have had in this figure. But really, this displacement of character confirms what I fear most about this figure, that the designers were ultimately unwilling to go all the way with the premise of a horror Bishoujo statue, and they shy away at the crucial moment from imbuing it with the touch of terrific uncertainty and unnerving menace that make Jason Voorhees the most visually interesting, memorable, and arguably the scariest of the slasher villains. This is Jason Voorhees, played by Derek Mears in the 2009 film. This is my personal favourite appearance of the character, and I hold that he has never looked scarier. This is a figure of a cosplayer. You know, she's wearing the trappings of Jason as a gesture, but the character of Jason himself is not present in this model. We just missed him by 2 centimetres. I think there's real potential for a top-quality distaff version of Jason Voorhees to be made into a figure. I'm just not sure that it can be done within the Bishoujo tradition, not really, because it requires a pretty face to be both present and prominent on the figure at hand. And as a result, I'm not sure I can really recommend this figure. Not because it's bad or flawed, but because I really wouldn't know who to recommend it to. I mean, for Jason fans, well, it's not really a figure of Jason Voorhees, is it? It might as well be a figure of this lady. And if you just enjoy collecting figures of this style, well, I don't know, maybe. But I don't think it has much in the way of substance that gives it real value, you know, makes it really worth having. But at least it is technically fairly sound and solid. At least until it breaks from falling over all the time due to these bloody magnets.